Marcus Chen pushed open the door to his mother's hospital room, and what he saw in that split second would haunt him for the rest of his life. He wasn't supposed to catch her. Elena had been in the hospital for 3 days. Pneumonia, the doctor said. Serious, but manageable. Marcus had been there that morning, held her hand, promised he'd be back after his meetings. His fiancée, Vivian, had volunteered to sit with her while he worked. Go handle your business, Vivian had said with a smile. I'll take care of her. He trusted her. So when Marcus finished early and decided to surprise them both with Elena's favorite flowers, he walked into Riverside Medical Center with nothing but gratitude in his heart. The ICU was quiet that afternoon. Sunlight poured through the windows, painting everything gold. He smiled at a passing nurse, clutched the bouquet a little tighter, and headed toward room 412. That's when he heard it, a muffled struggle, the frantic beeping of a heart monitor. His stomach dropped. Marcus's hand hit the door, pushing it open, and time fractured. Vivian stood over his mother's bed. Both hands gripping a pillow, pressing it down hard over Elena's face. His mother's frail fingers clawed weakly at Vivian's wrists, her body twisted beneath the sheets, fighting for air she couldn't get. And Vivian's face, God. Her face was twisted into something he'd never seen before. Rage, desperation, something cold and decided. The flowers hit the floor. What are you doing? His voice ripped through the room like a gunshot. Vivian's head snapped toward him. The pillow fell. Elena's chest heaved as she gasped for breath, roar, desperate, broken sounds that would echo in Marcus's mind forever. For one impossible second, Marcus couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't reconcile the woman he'd planned to marry with, the woman standing over his mother's dying body. This was Vivian, the woman who laughed at his jokes, who kissed him goodnight, who was supposed to walk down the aisle toward him in 3 months. But the woman staring back at him now, eyes wide, hands shaking, chest heaving, wasn't the woman he knew at all. And in that moment, Marcus realized something that would change everything. He had no idea who he'd been sleeping beside all these months. But before we begin, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because sometimes God lets us see the truth just in time before it's too late. Marcus's hands were still shaking when he lunged forward. He didn't think, didn't process. His body just moved, crossing the room in 2 strides, shoving Vivian back, placing himself between her and his mother like a wall she'd have to go through to finish what she'd started. Elena's breaths came in ragged gasps, her chest rising and falling too fast, too shallow. Marcus's hands found her face, tilting it gently toward him. Mom, look at me. Breathe. Just breathe. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, terrified, searching his face like she wasn't sure if he was real. Her lips trembled, trying to form words. But nothing came out except those broken, desperate sounds. The heart monitor screamed. It's okay, Marcus whispered, smoothing her silver hair back from her damp forehead. His voice cracked. I'm here. You're safe now. I'm here behind him. Vivian stood frozen against the wall, her chest heaving, her hands still shaped like they were holding something she'd dropped. She stared at them, at Marcus, cradling his mother, at Elena's fingers weakly clutching his sleeve. And for a moment, she looked almost surprised, like she hadn't expected him to walk through that door, like she thought she had more time. Marcus didn't look at her. He couldn't. If he did, he didn't know what he'd do. Elena's breathing started to slow. Her grip on his arm tightened just a little, and when her eyes finally focused on his face, really focused, a tear slipped down her cheek. Marcus, she breathed. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you." The door burst open. Two nurses rushed in, their eyes sweeping the room, taking in the scene, the screaming monitor. Elena gasping for air, Marcus hovering over her, Vivian backed into the corner. One nurse moved immediately to Elena's side, checking her vitals, adjusting her oxygen. The other glanced between Marcus and Vivian, her expression hardening. What happened here? Marcus's jaw clenched. He turned slowly, and for the first time since the pillow had fallen, he looked at Vivian. Really? Looked at her. She was pale, shaking. Her perfect blonde hair was disheveled, her designer blouse wrinkled. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They weren't filled with remorse. They weren't filled with horror at what she'd almost done. They were filled with fear. Not fear for Elena, fear for herself. "She tried to kill her," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. "I walked in and she was holding a pillow over my mother's face." The nurse's eyes widened. The second nurse immediately stepped toward the door, speaking quietly into a radio clip to her scrubs. "Security." She was calling security. Vivian's mouth opened. "No, no, that's not Marcus. You don't understand. I saw you." She was choking. Vivian's voice pitched higher, frantic now. "I was trying to help her sit up. She was coughing. I didn't know what to do. You were smothering her." "No, I saw you, Vivian." His voice didn't rise. He didn't shout, but the words landed like stones, heavy and unmovable. Vivian's face crumpled. She pressed her back harder against the wall, her hands coming up like she wanted to reach for him, but didn't dare. "Marcus, please. Please, just listen to me." She was going to ruin everything. She stopped. The room went silent. Even the heart monitor seemed to quiet. Its frantic beeping, slowing to a steadier rhythm. As Elena's oxygen returned, Marcus stared at her. "What did you just say?" Vivian's eyes darted to the nurses, to the door, back to Marcus. Her lips trembled. "I didn't mean what did you just say?" She shook her head, pressing her lips together, but the words had already escaped, and they hung in the air between them like smoke, visible, undeniable, poisonous. She was going to ruin everything. Two security guards appeared in the doorway, their presence filling the small room. One of them stepped forward, his hand resting casually on his belt. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us." Vivian's eyes snapped to Marcus, wide and pleading. "Marcus, Marcus, don't do this. We can talk about this. Just you and me. Please." He didn't answer. One of the guards moved closer. "Ma'am, I love you." Vivian's voice broke, raw and desperate. "I did this because I love you. Don't you see that?" Marcus turned away from her. He sat down slowly in the chair beside his mother's bed and took Elena's hand in both of his. He didn't watch as they led Vivian out. Didn't flinch when her voice rose in the corridor, pleading, sobbing, insisting this was all a misunderstanding. He just held his mother's hand and tried to breathe. The room felt smaller now. Elena's breathing had steadied, but her hand still gripped Marcus's like she was afraid to let go. Her eyes stayed fixed on his face, not saying anything, just watching him, making sure he was real, making sure he was staying. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said softly, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring her or himself. A doctor rushed in, flanked by another nurse. She moved quickly to Elena's bedside, checking the monitors, examining her throat, her pulse, her eyes. Marcus stood, but didn't step away. He stayed close enough that his mother could still reach for him if she needed to. "Mrs. Chen, can you hear me?" the doctor asked gently. Elena nodded, though the movement was weak. "Can you tell me what happened?" Elena's mouth opened. Her voice came out thin and rasping. She was "Don't," Marcus said, his hand finding hers again. "Don't push yourself. Just rest." The doctor's eyes shifted to Marcus. She didn't need to ask. The nurses had already told her. Down the corridor, Vivian's voice carried sharp, frantic, echoing off the walls. "You're making a mistake. He doesn't understand. She's been poisoning him against me for months." Marcus closed his eyes. The doctor finished her examination and stepped back, her expression carefully neutral. "She's going to be okay physically, but she'll need to stay another night for observation. We'll keep her on oxygen and monitor her vitals closely." Marcus nodded, unable to find words. "Mr. Chen," the doctor said quietly, glancing toward the door where Vivian's voice had finally faded. "The police are going to want to speak with you and with your mother when she's ready." "I know." The doctor placed a gentle hand on his shoulder just for a moment. And then she left. The room settled into a strange heavy silence. Marcus sank back into the chair. His elbows on his knees. His head in his hands. His mind kept replaying it. The door opening. The pillow. His mother's hands clawing for air. Vivian's face twisted into something unrecognizable. How long had she been standing there? How close had Elena come? 5 more minutes, maybe less. If he hadn't finished his meeting early, if he hadn't decided to stop for flowers, if he hadn't felt that pull in his chest telling him something was wrong, his mother would be dead. "Marcus." Elena's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the noise in his head like a blade. He looked up. Her eyes were glassy with tears, but there was something else there, too. Something that looked like guilt. "I'm sorry," she said. Marcus's face crumpled. "Mom, no, don't. I should have said something sooner." Her words came slow, each one an effort. "I knew something wasn't right. The way she looked at you sometimes, the way she smiled when I wasn't looking. I felt it, but I didn't want to interfere. I didn't want you to think I was controlling or jealous." "Stop." Marcus's voice broke. He leaned forward, taking both her hands in his. "This is not your fault. Do you hear me? None of this is your fault." A tear slipped down Elena's cheek. "I almost died because I didn't want to hurt your feelings." Marcus's chest tightened. He pressed his forehead gently against her hands, his shoulders shaking. "You tried to tell me," he whispered. "You did. And I didn't listen." They stayed like that for a long time, mother and son. Holding on to each other in a hospital room that still smelled faintly of fear and flowers scattered across the floor. Outside the window, the sun was setting. The city lights were beginning to flicker on one by one, like stars waking up. And somewhere down the hall, behind locked doors and security guards, the woman Marcus had planned to marry was telling anyone who would listen that she'd done it all for love. The police came an hour later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, stood at the foot of Elena's bed. Notepads in hand, voices gentle but direct. They asked Marcus to walk them through it, every detail, what time he arrived, what he saw, what Vivian said. Marcus answered mechanically, his voice flat. But when they asked to speak with Elena, something inside him snapped to attention. "She needs to rest." "We understand, Mr. Chen," the female officer said. But we need her statement while the details are fresh. Elena squeezed Marcus's hand. It's okay. She told them what she remembered. Vivian visiting that afternoon. The small talk that felt strained. And then without warning, Vivian's face changing, hardening into something Elena didn't recognize, she said. Elena's voice wavered. She said, I was in the way. The officers exchanged a glance. In the way of what, Mrs. Chen? Elena closed her eyes. Her future. When the police finally left, promising they'd be in touch. Marcus sat in the dimness of the room, staring at nothing. Elena had drifted into a restless sleep, her breathing soft but uneven. And for the first time since he'd walked through that door, Marcus let himself feel it. All of it. The woman he loved had tried to kill his mother. And the worst part, the part that made his stomach twist, was that he'd brought her into their lives. He'd ignored the small signs, dismissed his mother's gentle concerns, rushed into an engagement because he was tired of being alone. He thought of his father. He hadn't thought about him in years. But now the memory came flooding back, sharp and unwelcome. Marcus was 7 when his dad left. He could still remember the sound of the door slamming, the silence that followed, his mother standing in the kitchen, staring at the counter like she was trying to figure out how to hold the world together with her bare hands. She never said a bad word about him. Not once. She just kept going. She worked as a nurse during the day, cleaned office buildings at night. Marcus barely saw her some weeks, but every morning there was breakfast on the table. Every school event she was there, exhausted, smiling, pretending she wasn't running on 2 hours of sleep. When he got into business school, she cried. Not because she was sad, because she was proud. You're going to be somebody, she told him, gripping his hands. You're going to do things I never could. Marcus built his first company in grad school. By 32, he'd taken it public. By 38, he was a billionaire. And the first thing he did, the very first thing, was buy his mother a house. She stood in the driveway staring at it and burst into tears. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Yes, you do, Marcus said. You deserve everything. But even then, even with all his success, he felt it. That weight, that quiet, constant reminder that he owed her more than money could ever repay. She gave him everything. And he spent his whole life trying to be worthy of it. Maybe that's why he didn't see Vivian clearly. Maybe that's why he ignored his mother's concerns. Because deep down, some broken part of him believed he didn't deserve to be loved unless he earned it. And Vivian had made it feel so easy. Until today, when easy became deadly. Marcus met Vivian on a night when he wasn't looking for anyone. It was a charity gala, one of those events he attended more out of obligation than interest. Black ties, champagne glasses, wealthy people writing checks to feel good about themselves. He'd been planning to stay an hour, make a donation, and leave. And then she laughed. It wasn't forced or polite. It was genuine, real. She was standing near the bar talking to someone about the nonprofit's mission, and something the man said made her throw her head back and laugh like she'd forgotten anyone was watching. Marcus found himself walking over. You actually care about this, he said when the man walked away. Vivian turned surprised, then smiled. Why else would I be here? Most people come for the networking. And you? He paused. Honestly, guilt. She laughed again. And just like that, they were talking, not about business or money or who knew who, about things that mattered. She told him about her event planning work, not to impress him, but because she genuinely loved it, about organizing a fundraiser for a children's hospital that made her cry when she saw the kids' faces light up. She didn't ask what he did until halfway through the conversation. And when he told her, she just nodded. "That's nice, but what do you care about?" No one had asked him that in years. The weeks that followed felt like waking up. Dinners at quiet restaurants where they talked until closing. Long walks through the city where Vivian pointed out little details he'd stopped noticing. A mural, a street musician, the way light hit the buildings at dusk. She had this energy about her, this way of making ordinary moments feel significant. Her apartment was modest but warm. She insisted on splitting checks sometimes, laughing when he protested, "I'm not some damsel, Marcus. I can take care of myself." He loved that about her. 3 months in, he brought her home to meet Elena. His mother was kind as always. She asked Vivian about her work, her family, her dreams. Vivian answered with just the right mix of confidence and humility. And when Elena hugged her goodbye, she whispered to Marcus, "She's lovely." But there was something in her voice, something quiet and careful. "What?" Marcus asked later when they were alone. Elena hesitated. "Nothing, sweetheart. She seems very nice." But Elena smiled, touching his cheek. "I'm happy you're happy." 5 months later, Marcus proposed. They were watching the sunset from his penthouse terrace, the city glowing beneath them, and it just felt right. He got down on one knee, and Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course." A week later, over coffee, Vivian brought up a prenup. "I want you to know I love you," she said, her hand covering his. "Not what you have." Marcus shook his head. "I don't need that. I trust you." Something flickered across her face so fast he almost missed it. Disappointment, or frustration. But then she smiled and squeezed his hand. "Okay, if you're sure," he was sure. Elena had concerns, small ones, gently voiced. "What's the rush?" she asked one evening. "You've only known each other a few months." "Mom, I'm 45. I know what I want. I'm not saying she's not wonderful, darling. I'm just saying take your time." But Marcus didn't want to take his time. He'd spent years building empires and coming home to empty rooms. Vivian made him feel like maybe he could have both success and someone to share it with. So he ignored the way Vivian's smile sometimes tightened when Elena offered wedding advice. Ignored the way she called Elena mom a little too quickly, a little too eagerly. Ignored the small moments when her mask slipped and something colder showed through. He ignored it all until 2 weeks ago when Elena collapsed. Pneumonia, the doctor said she needed to be hospitalized, and Vivian volunteered to visit every afternoon while Marcus worked. "I'll keep her company," Vivian had said, kissing his cheek. "You focus on your meetings. I've got her." Marcus had been so grateful. He thought it meant she loved his mother. He didn't realize she was buying time. Waiting for her moment. Planning. Elena's pneumonia didn't get better the way they expected. What started as a manageable infection turned into complications. Her oxygen levels dropped. Her fever spiked. The doctors moved her to the ICU and spoke in careful, measured tones about recovery taking longer than anticipated. Marcus came every evening after work, sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, talking about nothing important, just filling the silence so she wouldn't feel alone. Vivian came during the afternoons, or so she said. 3 days before Marcus walked through that door, something happened that he wouldn't learn about until much later. Elena was awake when Vivian arrived that afternoon. Her breathing labored, but her mind clear. Vivian pulled a chair close to the bed, smiled warmly, and asked how she was feeling. Tired? Elena admitted. But I'll be all right. Of course you will. Vivian's voice was sweet. Too sweet. You're strong. They made small talk for a few minutes. The weather, the nurses, Elena's physical therapy progress, and then Elena said something that changed the air in the room. I've been thinking, Vivian. Maybe you and Marcus should postpone the wedding. Just until I'm well enough to really be present for it. Vivian's smile froze. Oh, well, if that's what you think is best, Elena reached for her hand. I just want to make sure you're both certain. Marriage is its everything. And sometimes when things move quickly, it's easy to miss things. Vivian's fingers tightened around Elena's. What kinds of things? Elena's eyes were gentle but honest. I've noticed how much pressure you both seem to be under. Marcus works so much and you're planning a wedding while dealing with all of this. I just worry. Have you two really had time to talk about the hard things? Money, family, what you both want out of life. We've talked, Vivian said quietly. I know you have, sweetheart. I'm not doubting that. Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. Marcus has a big heart. He leads with it. Always has. And that's beautiful. But sometimes it makes him vulnerable. I just want to make sure he's seeing clearly that you both are. Vivian pulled her hand back slowly. You don't think I'm right for him. That's not what I said. But it's what you mean. Elena sighed, her breath rattling slightly. I think you're lovely. I do. But I've also watched my son fall in love before, and this feels different, faster, and I can't shake the feeling that something's not quite right. Vivian stood, her purse clutched tight in her hands. Her knuckles were white. I should go, she said, her voice strained. Let you rest, Elena nodded, her eyes sad but unwavering. I'm not trying to hurt you, Vivian. I'm trying to protect him from me from rushing into something that isn't ready. Vivian left without another word. And Elena lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she just made a terrible mistake. What Elena didn't know, what no one knew, was that Vivian's apartment was drowning in debt. Credit card statements hidden in drawers, collection notices stuffed in shoe boxes, eviction warnings taped to her door when no one was looking. Her event planning business had collapsed 6 months ago, but she kept showing up in designer clothes and expensive makeup, smiling like everything was fine. Because if people knew she was broke, they'd stop taking her seriously. If Marcus knew, he'd see her differently. And Elena. Elena with her gentle voice and careful observations was about to tell him to slow down, to wait, to reconsider. If he listened to his mother, Vivian would lose everything. The engagement, the security, the life she'd spent 8 months carefully constructing. So, when Vivian visited the next day and Elena mentioned wanting to talk to Marcus about the wedding timeline, something inside Vivian snapped. What are you going to tell him? Vivian asked, her voice tight. Elena smiled softly. Just that maybe you both should take more time. Wait until I'm better. Make sure you're ready. Vivian's heart pounded. And if he agrees, then you'll have more time to build something real. But Vivian didn't want more time. She needed this to happen now before the creditors came, before Marcus saw through her, before his mother convinced him she wasn't enough. And as she left the hospital that evening, walking through the parking lot under a skyscraper with pink and gold, Vivian made a decision. Elena was the problem, and problems could be solved. By the time the detectives arrived, Elena was sleeping again. They were different from the first officers, older, quieter, with eyes that had seen too much. They asked Marcus to step into the hallway away from his mother, and he followed reluctantly, glancing back to make sure she was still breathing. Down the corridor, Vivian sat in a small waiting room under the watch of a security guard. Her makeup had run. Her hands were cuffed in front of her. And when she saw Marcus step out of the room, her face crumpled. "Marcus, please don't," he said, his voice cold, emptier than he'd ever heard it. The detective, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and a wedding ring on her finger, gestured toward a quieter corner. "Mr. Chen, can you walk me through what you witnessed?" Marcus did every detail. The pillow, his mother's hands, Vivian's face, and what did Miss Laurent say when you confronted her? Marcus hesitated, the words still echoing in his head. "She said my mother was going to ruin everything." The detective's pen paused. "Ruin what?" "I don't know." She didn't get to finish. But even as he said it, pieces were starting to click together. Small things he dismissed. The way Vivian's smile never quite reached her eyes when Elena offered wedding advice. How quickly she pushed for a fall wedding. The prenup suggestion that felt performative, like she was checking a box. The detective glanced toward the waiting room. "We'd like to speak with Miss Laurent now." "You're welcome to stay, but you don't have to." Marcus stayed. They brought Vivian into a small consultation room, and Marcus stood just outside, watching through the narrow window in the door. He told himself he needed to hear this, needed to understand. But part of him was hoping, desperately, foolishly hoping that there was an explanation that would make sense of this. "There wasn't, Miss Laurent," the detective began, her voice even. "Can you tell me what happened in Mrs. Chen's room this afternoon?" Vivian's lips trembled. "It's not what it looked like." "What was it then?" "She was trying to take him from me." Vivian's voice cracked, rising. "She's been poisoning him against me for months, telling him we're moving too fast, that I'm not good enough, that he should wait." "So, you tried to kill her?" "No, I just..." Vivian stopped, her chest heaving. Her eyes darted around the room like she was looking for an escape that didn't exist. "I needed her to stop." The detective leaned forward. "Stop what?" "Talking, interfering, ruining everything I've worked for." There it was again. That word, "worked for." The detective caught it, too. "What do you mean worked for?" Vivian's face twisted. She pressed her palms against her eyes, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you know how hard it is to get close to someone like Marcus? How many years I spent positioning myself in the right circles, going to the right events, making the right connections?" Marcus's stomach turned. "Miss Laurent. She was going to tell him to leave me." Vivian's voice broke into something raw and wild. I could see it in her eyes. Every time she looked at me, she was calculating, judging, deciding I wasn't enough. And if she told him to wait, to reconsider, he'd listen. He always listens to her. "So you tried to suffocate her?" Vivian's hands dropped. Her eyes were red, desperate, unrecognizable. "I love him. I did this because I love him." "That's not love," the detective said quietly. Outside the door, Marcus couldn't breathe. Years positioning myself. Their first meeting, the charity gala, her laugh, the way she'd seemed so genuine, it was all calculated, researched, planned. She hadn't fallen for him. She'd hunted him. The detective stood. "Vivian Laurent, you're under arrest for attempted murder." Vivian's head snapped up. No, you can't, Marcus." Her voice rose to a scream as they helped her to her feet. "Marcus, please don't let them do this. We can work through this. I love you." Marcus turned away. He walked back toward his mother's room. Vivian's voice echoing behind him, pleading, breaking, promising things that had never been real. And when he finally sat down beside Elena's bed again, when he took her hand in his and felt her fingers curl weakly around his, he let himself cry. Not for Vivian, but for the man he'd been 3 hours ago. The one who thought he'd found love, who thought he understood what trust meant, who thought he was building a future. That man was gone, and Marcus didn't know who was left in his place. The sun had set by the time the detective came back. Marcus was still sitting beside Elena's bed, his hand in hers, watching the rhythm of her breathing. He hadn't moved in over an hour, hadn't checked his phone, hadn't thought about work or meetings or the 20 emails probably waiting for him. None of it mattered. The detective knocked softly on the door frame. "Mr. Chen, can I have a moment?" Marcus nodded, carefully, untangling his fingers from his mother's. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. He stepped into the hallway, closing the door behind him. "We searched Miss Lawrence's apartment," the detective said. "With her consent, Marcus's throat tightened, and she's in significant financial trouble. Credit card debt over $180,000. Her event planning business filed for bankruptcy 6 months ago. There are eviction notices, collection letters, some dating back nearly a year." Marcus stared at her. The words not quite landing. "We also found evidence that she researched you extensively before you met. Browser history, saved articles, social media deep dives, the charity gala where you two met. She knew you'd be there. She positioned herself specifically to cross paths with you." His chest felt hollow. "I'm sorry," the detective said quietly. "I know this isn't easy to hear." Marcus leaned back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the floor. "She needed money. It appears so. And my mother," he swallowed hard. "My mother was going to tell me to slow down, to wait, and if I listened, Miss Laurent would lose access to you, to your resources." The words hung in the air between them, cold and clinical. Marcus closed his eyes. "How did I not see it?" The detective didn't answer right away. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "People see what they want to see, Mr. Chen. Especially when they're lonely." He looked up at her, and something in her expression told him she understood that maybe she'd been there, too. Once trusting the wrong person, missing the signs. "She'll be arraigned tomorrow," the detective continued. "Attempted murder. Given the evidence and your witness testimony, bail will likely be denied. You'll need to come in and give a formal statement when you're ready." Marcus nodded numbly. The detective handed him her card. "If you need anything, call me." She left him standing there in the hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of antiseptic and cafeteria food drifting through the air. He went back inside. Elena was awake now, her eyes tracking him as he crossed the room. She didn't say anything, just watched him sink into the chair, his shoulders sagging under the weight of everything he'd learned. "She was broke," Marcus finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The whole time, everything she showed me, the confidence, the independence, the woman who didn't need my money. It was all a lie." Elena's hand found his. "She targeted me. Mom researched me, planned the whole thing. Our meeting wasn't fate. It was strategy. A tear slipped down his cheek and I brought her into our lives, into your life. I almost got you killed because I was too desperate to be loved to see what was right in front of me." "Marcus, no. His voice cracked. You tried to warn me. You told me to slow down and I didn't listen. I was so sure I knew better. So sure you were just being overprotective. Elena squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Stop. He looked at her. You loved with an open heart, she said, her voice raspy but firm. That's not a flaw, sweetheart. That's who you are. Vivian's choices are hers. Her desperation, her lies, her violence, none of that is your fault. But I should have seen. You saw what she wanted you to see. That's what manipulators do. They study you. They learn what you need and become that person. Elena's eyes filled with tears. But you know what she didn't count on. Marcus shook his head. That instinct that brought you back here today. That voice inside you that said something was wrong. You listened to that and it saved my life. Marcus pressed his forehead against their joined hands, his shoulders shaking. I don't know how to trust anymore, he whispered. You will, Elena said softly. Not today, not tomorrow, but you will. Because love that's real doesn't need to be performed. It doesn't need to be earned. It just is. She paused, catching her breath. Vivian taught you what love isn't. Now you'll recognize what love is. They sat together in the dim hospital room, the city lights twinkling through the window. And for the first time since he'd walked through that door, Marcus let himself feel it. All the betrayal, the shame, the grief for something that never really existed. And beneath it all, something else. Relief. That he'd seen the truth before it was too late. That his mother was still here. That broken as he felt, he wasn't alone. For days passed before Elena was moved out of the ICU. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Her lungs were clearing. Her oxygen levels had stabilized, but there was something else they couldn't quite measure, a tiredness in her eyes that had nothing to do with pneumonia. Marcus barely left her side. The first morning after the incident, his assistant called, frantic. The board was demanding answers. There were meetings scheduled, contracts waiting for his signature, investors who needed reassurance. Marcus sat in the hospital cafeteria, his coffee untouched, and typed out an email he never thought he'd send. Family emergency. I'm taking leave. Trust the team I've built. I'll return when I'm ready. He hit send before he could second-guess it. Within minutes, his phone lit up. Calls, texts, panicked messages from executives who'd never seen him step away. Marcus silenced his phone and slipped it into his pocket. For the first time in 15 years, work would have to wait. Elena was awake when he came back to her room. She watched him settle into the chair, noticed the way his shoulders seemed lighter somehow. You didn't, she said softly. I did, Marcus. They'll survive without me for a few weeks. You almost didn't. His voice was quiet, but steady. I've spent my whole life building things. Mom, empires, companies, wealth, and I almost lost the only thing that actually matters. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Over the next few days, they fell into a rhythm. Marcus brought her favorite soup from the little diner, 3 blocks from her house, the one she used to take him to when he was a kid. He read to her from the mystery novel she loved, doing terrible voices for the characters until she laughed, which made her cough, which made them both laugh harder. The nurses started commenting on it, how rare it was to see someone so present, so undistracted. Most people can't put their phones down for 5 minutes, one nurse said, smiling. Your son hasn't looked at his once. Elena just squeezed Marcus's hand. The legal updates came in pieces. Vivian had been formally charged with attempted murder. Bail was denied. Her lawyer had tried reaching out to Marcus multiple times, looking for some kind of settlement, some way to make this go away quietly. Marcus's response was brief. No contact ever. A trial date was set for 6 months out. How do you feel about that? Elena asked one afternoon, her voice still raspy, but stronger. Marcus thought about it. I don't feel anything. Not anger, not satisfaction, just empty where she used to be. That's normal, Elena said. You're grieving someone who never really existed. Is that what this is? She nodded. You loved the person she pretended to be. That person is gone. Even if she never was real, your feelings were. And those feelings deserve to be mourned. Marcus absorbed that, turning it over in his mind. I keep thinking about what she said. He admitted that she spent years positioning herself, that our meeting was calculated. It makes me feel like such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're human. Elena shifted in her bed, wincing slightly. She saw your loneliness, Marcus. She studied you, learned what you needed, and became that person. That's not a reflection of your judgment. That's a reflection of her desperation. You almost died because of my blind spot. No. Elena's voice was firm. I almost died because she made a choice, a terrible, unforgivable choice. But you saved me. You listened to that voice inside you that said something was wrong and you came back. That's what matters. Marcus wanted to believe her. He was trying. That evening, after Elena had fallen asleep, Marcus found himself talking to the hospital chaplain, a quiet man with kind eyes who'd stopped by Elena's room earlier in the week. I don't know how to trust anymore, Marcus confessed. How do I move forward when I can't tell what's real? The chaplain was quiet for a moment. You start small. You start with the people who've proven themselves. Your mother, for instance. She's been steady your whole life, hasn't she? Marcus nodded. Build from there. Let trust be earned slowly over time through consistency. Not through grand gestures or perfect words, but through showing up day after day. The way you're showing up for her now. Something in Marcus's chest loosened slightly. Before he left, the chaplain added, sometimes God lets us see the truth just in time. Not to punish us, but to protect us. Maybe that instinct that brought you back here wasn't yours alone. Marcus sat with that long after the chaplain had gone. By the end of the week, Elena was discharged. Marcus moved her into his penthouse temporarily, he said, though they both knew he had no intention of letting her go back to her place alone anytime soon. He hired a nurse to help with her care, but he did most of it himself. Morning coffee together. Afternoon walks around the apartment. Evening conversations that stretched into the night. His executives sent updates. The company was running smoothly without him. Better even now that they had the freedom to step into leadership. Elena watched him one morning, sunlight streaming through the windows, and smiled. You're different. How? Quieter, more settled. She paused. More like the boy I raised. Before the empire, before the pressure, just you. Marcus looked out at the city below the place he'd conquered. The world he'd built. It didn't feel as important as it used to. What felt important was this. His mother's hand in his, her breathing steady, her smile real. This was enough. 6 weeks later, Elena stood in Marcus's kitchen making breakfast. It was a simple thing. Eggs, toast, coffee. But watching her move through the space, humming quietly to herself, felt like a miracle. Marcus didn't take for granted. "You're staring," Elena said without turning around. Marcus smiled. "Can't help it." She brought 2 plates to the table and sat across from him. Morning light poured through the windows, turning everything soft and golden. They ate slowly, talking about nothing important. The weather, a book Elena was reading, a documentary Marcus wanted to watch with her. These were the moments he'd missed while building his empire. These were the moments that mattered. The call came while they were finishing their coffee. Vivian had taken a plea deal. Attempted murder reduced to aggravated assault. 7 years in prison. No trial necessary. Marcus set his phone down and stared at it for a long moment. "How do you feel?" Elena asked gently. "I don't know," he looked up at her. "Part of me wanted to face her in court to hear her explain it, but mostly I just want it to be over." Elena reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "It is over, sweetheart. She can't hurt us anymore." "Do you hate her?" Marcus asked quietly. "For what she did to you?" Elena was quiet, considering. "No, I feel sad for her. Sad that she's so broken she thought violence was her only option. Sad that desperation twisted her into someone capable of that." She paused. "But sadness isn't the same as allowing her back into our lives. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying in harm's way. It means freeing yourself from the weight of what someone else did to you." Marcus absorbed that the wisdom in her words, settling over him like a bomb. "I hope she finds whatever she needs in there," Elena added softly. "I hope she gets help. Real help. Not for our sake, but for hers." That was his mother still extending grace even to the woman who tried to kill her. Later that afternoon, they sat on the penthouse terrace, the city sprawling beneath them. Elena was wrapped in a blanket, her color finally returned, her strength coming back day by day. "You know what I've been thinking about?" Marcus said, "Hard meeting, the one I was in when the hospital called." He shook his head. "I almost didn't answer. Almost sent it to voicemail because I was in the middle of a presentation." Elena turned to look at him, but something stopped me. Something I can't explain. This feeling in my chest that said I had to pick up, had to go. His voice grew quiet. "If I'd ignored that call, if I'd stayed in that meeting 5 more minutes. But you didn't." "I know, but it wasn't logic that got me there, Mom. It wasn't planning or strategy. It was just this voice, this pull." Elena smiled softly. "Maybe that was God looking out for both of us, giving you the instinct you needed exactly when you needed it." Marcus had never been particularly religious. Elena had taken him to church as a kid, but as an adult, he drifted away, too busy building his life to think about faith, but sitting there now, remembering that inexplicable urgency that had sent him running, he couldn't deny it felt like something beyond himself. "Thank you," he whispered, unsure if he was talking to his mother or to someone else entirely. "For what?" "For raising me to listen to that voice. For teaching me that love isn't something you earn. It's something you choose every single day." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You've always known that, sweetheart. You just forgot for a little while." The weeks that followed were the most peaceful Marcus had known in years. His company thrived under distributed leadership. He joined board meetings from home, made decisions remotely, and found that the world kept turning without him being everywhere at once. He stopped measuring his worth by his bank account or his latest acquisition. He started measuring it by mornings with his mother, by the sound of her laughter, by the way her hand felt in his during their evening walks. One night, As they sat together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Elena squeezed his hand. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "You saved mine first," Marcus replied. "Every day for 45 years," she smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. "That's what love does. It saves us over and over in ways we don't always see." Marcus understood now what Vivian had never grasped, that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars or possessions. It was measured in presence, in sacrifice, in showing up when it mattered. Even when it cost you something. His mother had shown up for him his entire life. And now, finally, he was showing up for her. "I built an empire, Mom," Marcus said softly. "But you were always my foundation, and I almost lost you because I forgot that." "You didn't lose me," Elena whispered. "I'm right here." They sat together as the city lights began to flicker on below them, one by one, like promises being kept. And in that moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect. It wasn't. He'd been betrayed. His trust had been shattered. He had healing left to do. But he wasn't alone. And sometimes that's enough to start rebuilding. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you that healing is possible, that grace still finds people, that maybe you're not as alone as you thought, please share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Elevated Heart Stories. Tell me in the comments what lesson are you taking from Marcus's journey, because maybe this story found you for a reason. In the golden light of that evening, mother and son sat together, knowing that even in the darkest moments, there's always a path forward. You just have to choose it and choose the people who choose you back every single day.